Elon Musk has been running wild, undermining our democracy, creating chaos, and imposing his will from the inside and facing zero consequences. I kept asking, and maybe you did too, how is this possible? Why can't our Democrat leaders push back? Well, in today's breaking news, 2 U.S. senators are finally taking action to rein him in, and you're going to want to hear what they're doing via the breakdown coming up next. I will have more about their exact maneuver in just a minute, but first I want you to see the shouting match that erupted on the House side when Democrats in the Oversight Committee called for Elon Musk to come and testify before them. And on the other side, I'll show you what Senators Warren and Wyden did to light a fire under Musk.
Mr. Chairman, why don't we want to debate Elon Musk coming in and talking to us about how he's enriched himself in $34 million? Mr. Chairman, you're right.
Mr. Chairman, I think it's outrageous that this committee will not entertain a...
No, you state your that's not an order.
Our federal leadership data, and we will not even entertain a motion to break this precedent. Yeah, let's have order in this country.
You're out of order. You know you're out of order. You know the rules of this committee.
Elon Musk is out of order in this country.
So that could reveal that Republicans are standing by the hitman Elon Musk, who is carrying out another destructive mission for the mob boss Donald Trump. But the party of law and order is striking back with a move of their own. And our Democrat Senators Warren and Wyden, who sent this letter of demand to the Comptroller General of the United States Government Accountability Office. And here's my newsreader to deliver every jaw-dropping word.
Dear Mr. Dodaro, we write to ask that the Government Accountability Office, GAO, conduct an investigation of reports indicating that Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent granted Elon Musk and other Department of Government Efficiency employees unprecedented access to the federal government's payment systems on January 31st, 2025. These reports are deeply troubling. These critical systems process trillions of dollars of transactions each year and contain sensitive personal and financial information for tens of millions of Americans. These systems ensure that Social Security checks, tax refunds, and Medicare benefits are paid on time and are essential to preventing a default on federal debt. GAO must investigate and determine who was granted access to these systems, why and how this access was granted, and the implications for the nation's economic and national security. According to the public reporting, newly confirmed Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent was personally involved in granting Mr. Musk and his team access to these systems, and in pushing out the department of the Treasury Department's top career official, Mr. David Liebrecht, who has long overseen the federal government's financial infrastructure and its operations, including managing the extraordinary measures the department has been taking to avoid a default on U.S. debt. The process by which Mr. Musk obtained access to these systems is troubling, as are the implications. First, the access may threaten economic and national security. These systems control the flow of over $6 trillion in payments to American families, businesses, and other recipients each year, with millions relying on them for Social Security checks and Medicare benefits, federal salaries, government contract payments, grants, and tax refunds this filing season. Information in these systems is also critical to the department's managing payments on the national debt. And Mr. Liebrecht was a key official responsible for the extraordinary measures the department has been taking to avoid a default that could have devastating consequences. A misstep here could result in a global financial meltdown that costs trillions trillions of dollars and billions of jobs. In addition, the access provided to Mr. Musk and his team has important privacy implications for millions of Americans. The Treasury payment systems include sensitive personal information about the millions of Americans who receive Social Security checks, tax refunds, and other payments from the federal government. It is not clear why these individuals were granted unfettered access to such data, what they could do with it once inside these systems, and what protections are in place to ensure the department has been complying with its legal obligations under the Privacy Act, 26 U.S.C. 6103, as well as other statutes and Treasury regulations that protect such sensitive information about millions of Americans. Finally, with access to these critical systems, Mr. Musk or others in the Trump administration may be able to illegally enact a political agenda and unilaterally restrict disbursement of money approved for specific purposes by Congress. His team reportedly sought access in part so Mr. Musk could deploy his engineers to find ways to turn off the flow of money from the Treasury Department to things that Mr. Trump wants to defund. Given the threats to Americans' privacy and the national and economic security risks posed by Mr. Musk and his team's access to critical federal payment systems, we ask that the GAO conduct this investigation as rapidly as possible. This investigation should answer the following questions. 1. Under what circumstances were Mr. Musk and members of his team granted access to the Treasury Department's federal payment systems? 2. What specific systems were accessed? 3. Which individuals at the department provided Mr. Musk and members of his team with access? 4. Did the White House or Secretary Vestman place any undue pressure on career officials to grant this access? 5. Did the individuals who were granted access to these systems have appropriate training and clearances? 6. What information in these systems have these individuals accessed? What have they done with it, and what was their rationale? 7. What laws, rules, regulations, or policies are in place to protect privacy with regard to these payment systems, including the protection of tax data under 26 U.S.C. 6103? Were any of these laws, rules, regulations, or policies breached? 8. What laws, rules, regulations, or policies are in place to protect economic and national security, such as protecting programs or individuals from missed payments, or preventing those with access to key information in these systems from sharing it with foreign adversaries? With regard to these payment systems, were any of these laws, rules, regulations, or policies breached? 9. Once obtaining access to these systems, Mr. Musk or others in the Trump administration may have been able to illegally enact a political agenda by unilaterally restricting disbursement of money approved for specific purposes by Congress. Were protections in place to prevent these abuses? 10. These Treasury payment systems are critical to ensuring payment of the national debt and avoiding default. And Mr. LeBrec, who was put on leave when Mr. Musk and others were given access, was a key official responsible for enacting the extraordinary measures the department has been taking to avoid a default on debt. Did the circumstances leading up to Mr. LeBrec's departure increase the threat of a default on the national debt? 11. Elon Musk's X announced that it would be partnering with Visa on a payment system it plans to launch this year. This raises the possibility that individuals granted access to these payment systems may be using information they obtained via this access for their own personal gain. Were appropriate protections in place to identify and manage individuals with conflicts of interest who may have had access to these systems? 12. Elon Musk's Tesla has significant ties to China, where the company operates its largest factory by output and receives favorable treatment from the Chinese government. Were appropriate protections in place to identify and manage national security risks related to individuals who may have had access to the system? We thank you for your attention to this important matter of economic and national security. Sincerely, Elizabeth Warren, Ranking and Member Committee on Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs. Ron Wyden, United States Senator, Ranking Member, Committee on Finance.
Donald Trump and Elon Musk's reign of chaos has exposed a gaping hole in our democracy. A hole so wide they're driving a fleet of dumpster fires straight through it and at top speed. For the first 248 years, our government was not just bound by the Constitution, but also a shared understanding of limits, unwritten rules that presidents, senators, and members of Congress honored to keep our democracy intact. But those days are gone. Donald Trump, fueled by Project 2025 and Elon Musk, is hell-bent on breaking every norm, and they are ruthlessly exploiting every weakness in the system. And unless we confront this reality head-on, the damage will be great and perhaps irreversible. Warren and Wyden's letter is a great move, but it's just a letter. Somehow we didn't have the guardrails in place to prevent this egregious breach of our democracy. And now I want to know what you think. Are Democrats up to the task of striking back at Trump's authoritarian madness with full force? And do you think letters like these have any teeth to make real change? Huh? Democrats, brace yourselves, because this video includes something that you're probably not going to want to hear today. Morning Joe just broadcasted a major warning about a decision that is paramount to our democracy, a decision that appears to be a tipping point in Trump's favor, and I have a breakdown for you next. Let's begin by diving into the context for this breaking story, then I'll get to the move that has Democrats very anti-Trumpers celebrating. Tulsi Gabbard will face a committee vote today, and if she passes, her nomination will advance to the Senate floor for confirmation. Here's the Morning Joe team sharing their utter disgust that she's even under consideration.
She's not qualified for the job. She's been, shall we say, consistently wrong in her judgments. And the idea that she might be confirmed for this is another disappointment, and it's a head shaker.
She also has endorsed the Russian view of the war in Ukraine, among many other things that people are concerned about.
Tulsi Gabbard handled her relationship with the butcher of Syria, Assad, responsible for the murder of 500,000 Syrians, also who used chemical weapons against his own people, or again, Edward Snowden, where she refused to condemn Snowden in one question after another question after another question.
So why are extremists like Tulsi Gabbard, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and Kash Patel this close to being nominated, in spite of their sketchy histories and lack of qualifications? One word, and it's fear. Have a listen to this chilling explanation of how the voting members are influenced before Morning Joe sounds the alarm about this vote and does a deeper dive into the fear Republicans are facing.
Some members of Congress that I've spoken to said, listen, it's not just the primary that we have to worry about. It's actually our own personal safety that we now have to worry about. I have to worry about the safety of my spouse, the safety of my children, if I defy Donald Trump. And when you've got Don Jr. coming out very forcefully and saying, we want all of these to be a yes, there is no exception for Tulsi Gabbard. There is no exception for Bobby Kennedy. He is speaking for the MAGA base, and literally I've had members of Congress say, look, you know, you do have to worry in this day and age, you have to worry about your own safety as well. It's not just the primary factor.
And now for the alarm sounded by Morning Joe. The margin is so slim on the confirmation votes that Democrats need a few Republicans to push through their fear, find a place of intellectual honesty, and toss these nominees on the Donald Trump dung pile of rejects. But swinging the vote on Gabbard is now less likely because a key Republican holdout just folded to the fear and political pressure.
Well, there's an old saying in soccer, in English football, it's the hope that kills you. I suspect they have a similar saying in Maine about Susan Collins. It's a hope that kills you. I mean, Susan Collins, supposedly a traditional Republican, there is no way she would ever vote for Tulsi Gabbard except for political expediency and fear. Is there, Richard? I'll put that in question form.
Thank you for that rhetorical question, Joe. You know, what comes to mind, Joe, is remember Avi Eban, the former Israeli foreign minister, he once famously said about Palestinians, they never miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity. Susan Collins never misses an opportunity to disappoint. She's a serial disappointer. And Tulsi Gabbard rarely misses an opportunity to get it wrong.
But the thing that has the common thread for all of the people that we talk about during these confirmation battles, whether it's Joni Ernst with Pete Hegseth, Tom Tillis with Pete Hegseth, Bill Cassidy for RFK Jr., Susan Collins for Tulsi Gabbard, the common thread is all of these people are going to be on a ballot in 2026. Some of them have already received primary challenges, but that threat is something that comes up in every conversation that I have with my sources on the Hill about this. The politics looms so large over everything. Elon Musk and the millions that he could throw into a primary challenge, others who can ignite the MAGA base online and direct their ire at some of these senators, all of that is factored in, and it really is a sign of how palpable the politics of a primary is in this MAGA era. And frankly, as much as we talk about Trump and Elon's relationship and its potential to fray or fracture, this is actually one of the things that continues to work in Elon Musk's favor within the Trump administration, is that he, in addition to the work that he's trying to do in government, is also the guard dog of the MAGA agenda, because he can leverage millions at primary challenges, and all of that is in the mix here on Capitol Hill.
Guys, I was on the Hill last Thursday during that day where they had hearings all happening against Kennedy and Patel and Tulsi Gabbard, and they were talking to congressional aides. The thing is, it's about the math. What's so hard for these Republican senators is being that one vote can be blamed. It's hard to be that if you are assuming that Collins and Murkowski and McConnell, who showed a willingness to defy Trump, are going to be three. Now, Tulsi Gabbard's case, Collins didn't even get there, but we know there are other Republican senators who have real concerns about what we're watching in Indiana as well. But the issue is, it's still and as agents said, what they would really need would be a bunch of senators to come together to say, no, here's what we need 5, 6, 7, or 8. And there would be that one person that get all the blame, and potentially the Elon Musk back primary challenge.
Well, and let's again underline what Kennedy just said. Members of Congress are telling her that they're not only afraid of primary challenges, they're afraid of violence. They're afraid of violence if they vote against people who are unqualified to run the most important agencies in America.
That's something not
The fear of 40 years just explained shows how easily programmable our system currently is. It is mind-boggling that a madman and his son can make threats to members of his own party and be backed up by another madman with money to burn. That sounds like a criminal enterprise to me. And shame on the politicians who lack backbone and capitulate under the pressure. I wonder if Elon Musk does finance your opponent in the next election. Be exactly who you are, vote out of integrity, and let the chips fall where they may. Your legacy should be one of service and conviction, not one of survival and longevity. If you don't have the backbone, step aside for someone who does. We already knew that our system was deeply flawed, but it took corrupt souls like Trump and Musk to show us that it was rotten to the core. If you're for one to fix those evenly masked and do that thing he does, this video is for you. If you're not familiar with one of the Democratic congressman and former professor of constitutional law, I think you'll enjoy getting to know him through his takedown of Elon Musk today, and I hope you know that this great story comes up next. When I saw this story unfolding, I needed a quick explanation of what the name of Trump's White House chaos was going on. And I thought it was leading up to speed. A report that includes the phrase as hostile takeover and criminal origin.
U.S. President Donald Trump will speak off the one of America's biggest rivals. China was one of the times to impose 25% tariffs for Canada and Mexico. China faced only 10% tariffs on its imports. Bringing it back to 15% tariffs on U.S. imports. The trade war is reaching in Canada's level in the battlefield. U.S. President Donald Trump was the implications of retaliatory measures that may be enacted against the United States. Trump was scheduled to speak to his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping on Tuesday, but when asked for details about the current call, Trump said that he was only planning to speak to the Chinese president.
what kind of relationship.
Stronger than expected fixing rate for the yuan against the US dollar on Wednesday, signaling that China does not want to limit its tariffs. China's fixing rate for the yuan is 7.698 for US dollar on Wednesday, compared to the 7.698 rate set for the January. At the same time, the countries keeps China accused the US of suppression after America posted suspended losses in China. The move can have a major impact on economic science, Pakistan, and China. Beijing is actively
unreasonable suppression after the U.S. Postal Service temporarily suspended inbound international packages from China and Hong Kong. The stoppage will be in place for further notice. The letters and mail will not be affected. Right, for more, we are joined now by CNA's Han Suhui live in Beijing. So, Suhui, first up, what is the significance of this possible ban by the U.S. Postal Service?
So it's extremely significant, and in response to that powerful ban, China has urged the U.S. to stop weaponizing and politicizing trade and economic issues to suppress Chinese companies. It said that it would take necessary measures to safeguard the legitimate rights of Chinese companies without elaborating what these necessary measures are. And what you said already, that the U.S. has stopped accepting parcels from mainland China as well as Hong Kong, with the exception of letters. Now, the U.S. Postal Service did not give a reason to that, but it follows the tariffs that were set across all Chinese goods, 10% tariff. Now, the U.S. has blamed China for its fentanyl crisis domestically, and here is the response by the Chinese Foreign Affairs Ministry.
对方在对是关注竞争中方采取的措施是维护自身正当权益的一种手段。施压威胁这种行为中，中方为了对方纠正错误。
We're expecting more discussions with other Asian leaders. We're expected to visit Washington. We do know Japanese Prime Minister, he will be visiting Washington in the coming days, as well as Indian Prime Minister in the next week. But for the EU, the European Union, what we do know is that Mr. Trump had previously said that tariffs are going to come, in his words, pretty soon. So what we are seeing at the moment is that the EU seems to have an apparent change in stance towards China. It had previously been really hawkish towards China, but this time it says that there could be space for deeper trade ties and possibly finding agreement with Beijing. And what we do see is that this comes in an era of, according to the president of the EU, saying that it's an era of hyper-competitive and hyper-transactional geopolitics. And it appears China welcomes this change in supposed stance towards China, with the Foreign Affairs Ministry saying that China-EU relations have all the more strategic importance and amid an increasing fragmented world. It also highlights that
do a job with it too. They've been responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site. Get rid of the destroyed buildings while it have created economic development that will supply unlimited numbers of jobs and housing for the people of the area.
The Hamas has slammed Mr. Trump's remarks as ridiculous and absurd, saying his plans would destabilize the region. The U.S. president has been looking at the relocation of Palestinians to neighboring Egypt and Jordan was harder to discuss. But Arab nations have rejected the idea, which goes against America's colonial vision of the two-state solution. China has also expressed its own objection to Mr. Trump's plan to move Palestinians out of the enclave. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese says that his government's position on the issue remains unchanged and reiterated Australia's support for the two-state solution. Health Ambassador to the United Nations says the people of Gaza wish to return and rebuild their homes.
Our homeland is our homeland. If Babylon is destroyed, it has a strength. The Palestinian people selected the choice to return to it. In 2 days, it's been a few hours, 400,000 Palestinians walking, return to the northern part of the Gaza Strip. I think that we should be respecting the selections and the wishes of the Palestinian people and the Palestinian people. And then we make that determination. That determination they want to see the destruction of Gaza. They want to rebuild Gaza.
Arrived for senior Middle East and North Africa analyst Ed Ray explains the implications of President Trump's Middle East plan and the possible reactions of key regional players.
We now have some very strong transparency as to where the relationship will go. Trump is going to green light potential population transfers out of the Gaza Strip, some of all that ethnic cleansing. He's very responsive of the idea of Israel annexing part of the West Bank, and there's a very bullish on how the Israeli population is going to follow the obstacles. And I think the major surprise here is Trump suggesting that the U.S. has some sort of role in the Gaza Strip, and that's almost defining the problem. I think Trump is actually going to act the maximum bias strategy when it comes to the Israeli-Palestinian under multiple so long as the conflict as it evolves doesn't come on the front page of the United States. There's a domestic Palestinian movement. It's serving his domestic agenda. I think the president probably want to give too much time to this issue. I think it's not bringing very necessary. The Israelis under this government have clearly concluded that clearing out the population, especially ethnic cleansing, is probably their best bet to restoring security with Gaza. Trump certainly knows that the Egypt will try to American aid, military aid, that will march in out, that money is going to come, that the Egyptians, Jordanians will come around this idea of taking in Palestinian refugees. I tend to think of it as unlikely because the government's stability will be threatened when that if they need to be putting with ethnic transfers out of the Palestinian territory. It's simply a red line and no amount of money can overcome that social constraint that these governments face. Now, that being said, I do think that these countries will be more open to the idea of quiet migration or migration. Palestinians, perhaps, instead of that, they could provide seriously wanting to reduce the population of Gaza Strip. We think that
operations are facing massive losses after they have been kicked out from Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali. Recently, it has been revealed that Air France has faced a collective loss of 65 million euros because it was kicked out of the Sahel region. The loss has been so painful that Air France wants to return to the Sahel region.
Oh. Okay. That boy hopped the curve to get me. And then he got kicked. That's crazy. Cause I punched him before. No. I only got 2 hands. I'm parked. And then I got pulled over earlier for reckless driving because I drifted my back end spun out. Well, went out, and I almost hit the cop. And I knew that was the cop. I just didn't care.
Up and down from one side to the other. Yes.
I knew that was a cop. I just didn't have my plate on, so I just really didn't care. I was just switching hands because my left hand was shaking. What's this right here? Huh? Yeah, no problem. I just want a bike squat. I said I just want a bike squat. No. I said a bike squat. So I could like drive the bike around.
They don't have them right now?
No, they do. I just gotta have permission to drive.
Journalism will have a month to the live stream. According to Ford, they have
We woke up this morning. We just want to thank you for that. We want to thank you for all the blessings that you've given us today. The things that
On a peaceful morning, while markets open as normal and politicians exchange customary handshakes, Canada makes a step that the United States never imagined it would dare to do. It is not loud, but it is strategic. This is the type of maneuver that not only disrupts trade deals, but also shakes economies. It's not just about tariffs. It's about power plays, billion-dollar industries, and political personalities clashing on a global scale. The United States felt they were in control until Canada changed the script. And what comes next? It's about to become nasty. The spark? The 25% levy on Canadian goods was announced without warning. The U.S. portrays it as a national security action, fighting trade imbalances, and the need to defend American workers and its customers. But make no mistake, this is not about security. It's all about control. Tariffs are more than simply figures on paper. These are economic weapons. They don't strike on purpose. However, the harm of this war is real. $300 billion in commodities pass through U.S.-Canada ports each year. We are talking about automobiles, steel, aluminum, and even basic foodstuffs. For Canada, this is more than simply an economic sector. It is personal. Jobs are on the line. Entire industries are at risk. But here's something the U.S. didn't expect. Canada is not going to bend. While Washington celebrates its harsh attitude, Canada is not going to come. The United States expects Canada to negotiate, make bend. Instead, Canada strikes back hard. However, this is not an emotional experience. It's precise, strategic, and ruthless. Instead of arbitrarily imposing taxes on U.S. goods, Canada seeks to maximize impact. American bourbon is careful. Florida orange juice is balanced. What about electric automobiles, particularly Tesla? Direct strike. Why do these items exist? Because they are pressure. Bourbon enters Mississippi from the backyard. Orange juice enters Florida, a key electoral battleground. Tesla? That's not simply a firm. It's America's technological crowning gem. Canada isn't simply fighting back. They are conveying a message. We know where it hurts and aren't scared to press down. Just like that, the trade war is no longer hypothetical. It is real. And it is personal. When Canada pursues Tesla, it is not a fluke. It's a brilliant move in economic warfare. Tesla relies on Canadian-controlled materials. Nickel, lithium, and aluminum. These are not just resources. They are the lifeblood of electric car manufacture. And now Canada is in control of the market. Here is the ripple effect. Higher material costs lead to higher automobile prices and slower sales. Investors become concerned. Consumers become frustrated. Competitors begin circling like sharks. However, Canada is not just interested in Elon Musk's financial success. They are targeting America's sense of invincibility. Because it messes with the symbol of American ingenuity and fleet built in Europe. Tesla represents this capability nicely. But most North American car industry is in danger of being destroyed. Here's something not close to real. A single vehicle part might shortage of U.S.-Canada border 8 days. And the world knows. Factories in Detroit, Ontario, and Mexico are not untenable. They're partners in a massive supply chain. When the U.S. imposes tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum, they believe it will defend American employment. It is doing the reverse. Now, components are more costly. Factories are slowing down. American workers are losing their jobs. Here's the irony. Canada understands that this will happen. They understand that the supply chain is vulnerable. And while the U.S. believes it is demonstrating power, it is essentially hitting itself in the face. This is not only about CEOs and politicians. It features little communities in Ohio, Michigan, and Alberta. Communities that rely on these sectors for survival.
Prince Turkey, welcome to the program. You have been digesting what came from the White House last night. You probably heard the view from Ramallah. So is there going to be a united Arab front against
this Trump vision?
Thank you, Mr. Mahfoud, for inviting me. After hearing Mr. Barghouti, I really don't know what to add to what he said, other than to say that what came out of Mr. Trump is not digestible. I respectfully decline to add more disrespectful comments to that. But it is a fantasy to think that ethnic cleansing in the 21st century can be condoned by a world community that stays on its behind and does not respond to that. The problem in Palestine is not the Palestinians. It is the Israeli occupation. And this has been clear and understood by everybody. Hence, you have United Nations resolutions calling for the quid pro quo of land for peace from 1967 until now. The Arab Peace Initiative, of course, is based on that and offers Israel not only diplomatic relations, but all of the things that Israel wanted from trade, from normalization, etc., in return for the establishment of a Palestinian state with its capital in East Jerusalem. All of these things were American policy until this latest wording that Mr. Trump has chosen to use in
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip.
It's utter lunacy that the President of the United States is speaking in those terms.
The definition of insanity is to just keep repeating the same thing and expecting different results. So say what you will about President Trump's plan, the very fact that it's different makes it probably a lot saner.
The thing that has been done over and over again for decades, giving a carte blanche for Israel to behave however it wants towards the Palestinians.
With over 64,000 people dead, and now we're talking about building a paradise on top of their bodies. It's a little bit.
You know what, really? I don't know, man. I'm expecting you to take that line so vehemently.
America needs to cut all ties with all sides and just stay out of it. You talk about doing the same thing over and over. How about an independent Palestinian state?
I think it's an idea that's worth thinking about. We shouldn't use cliches like ethnic cleansing.
And I'm not saying ridiculous things. Please, respect me.
The same thing.
Yeah, we did say the same thing because you don't answer the question.
Because you are biased to Israel.
World leaders, scholars, diplomats, monarchs, activists and analysts have all spent decades on failed plans for Gaza and the goal of bringing peace to Palestine. None of them has ever come up with anything remotely like this, though.
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it too. We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site, level the site and get rid of the destroyed buildings, level it out, create an economic development that will supply unlimited numbers of jobs and housing for the people of the area. Do a real job, do something different. Just can't go back. If you go back, it's going to end up the same way it has for 100 years.
Well, part of the Trump Gaza plan is to relocate about 2 million Palestinians to Jordan and Egypt, while the United States clears the war-torn strip and leads a massive project to rebuild it. With his real estate hat on in place of his red.
Well, how do you spell stack?
The glorious resources of Palestinians and investors from all over the world.
How do you spell stack?
The potential in the Gaza Strip is unbelievable. The
S-T-
entire world, representatives from all over the world will be there, and they'll live there. Palestinians also. Palestinians will live there. Many people will live there. But they've tried the other, and they've tried it for decades and decades and decades. It's not going to work. It didn't work. It will never work. And you have to learn from history. History is, just can't let it keep repeating itself. We have an opportunity to do something that could be phenomenal. And I don't want to be cute, I don't want to be a wise guy, but the Riviera of the Middle East, this could be something that could be so this could be so magnificent. But more importantly than that is the people that have been absolutely destroyed.
How do you spell civilian?
In a much better situation because they're living in hell, and those people will now be able to live in peace.
Well, as ever with President Trump, a lot to unpack there. His right to history cannot be allowed to repeat itself. It's also right Palestinians are living in hell. Only a radical breakthrough can end the cycle of endless violence, and we have their decades of suffering to prove. The Palestinians are not pawns on a chessboard. They certainly weren't moved by choice. Forcing them to move is
Civilian.
ethnic cleansing. And who's going to do the forcing anyway? Israel has waged a brutal 15-month war in Gaza, which didn't even depose Hamas. Sending US troops to seize Gaza would be a drastic 180 on everything Canada Trump stood for. And Congress may have one or two problems with a decades-long military occupation and a multi-billion-dollar building plan. As the Gazans returning to live in harmony with investors from around the world, well, good luck with that. Here's what I really think is going on here. This is the final part of Trump's press conference.
We'll make sure that it's done world class. It'll be wonderful for the people. Palestinians, mostly we're talking about. And I have a feeling that despite them saying no, I have a feeling that the King Jordan, and that the general president, but that the general in Egypt will open their hearts and will give us the kind of land that we need to get this done, and people can live in harmony and in peace.
Well, last week, Egypt and Jordan said a ferocious no to essentially relocating Gaza to their countries, staunchly backed by Saudi Arabia. The Trump deal makers cranked up the heat, whose made what once seemed outrageous feel like a sensible middle ground. We've already seen this play out in Mexico and Canada on tariffs, with Colombia on migrants, with Panama on the canal. A deal with Denmark over the US presence in Greenland could be next. We know that President Trump has done a Nobel Peace Prize to take back to Mar-a-Lago. The big shiny deal between Saudi Arabia and Israel would be one hell of an entry. Well, stacking the negotiating table with crazy demands and designed to be sacrificed might not be so crazy after all. To debate all this and more, I'm joined by the host of the Michael Knowles Show on Daily One,
Arrest.
QBD podcast Angry Patriot, Vinny Oshana, Palestinian-American commentator Omar Bada, and director of the Libertarian Institute and host of the Scott Horton Show, Scott Porter. Well, welcome to all of you. Michael Knowles, let's start with you. On the face of it, it's an outrageous idea by Donald Trump that involves the displacement of 2 million people from their homes where they've been for many, many decades. They would say that they've been about hundreds, if not thousands of years.
Suspects.
Them to neighbouring countries against their wishes because he thinks it could create some sort of peaceful utopia, a Riviera on the Gaza Strip. Many people think this is for the birds. Many people think it is a form of ethnic cleansing by the purest definition of that phrase. What do you think of it? I mean, do you see good, bad, and ugly? Do you think it's got merit? What do you feel?
People can call it insane, but of course the definition of insanity is to just keep repeating the same thing and expecting different results. So say what you will about President Trump's plan, the very fact that it's different makes it probably a lot saner than the supposed peace plans we've had for almost a century now. It's clear President Trump has never seen a piece of real estate that he didn't want to acquire, and I think Greenland is a little more scenic than Gaza, but nevertheless, perhaps a golf resort or a casino would look good in that area. But I suspect you're right, Piers. I think that probably President Trump is talking past the sale here. I think he is probably giving himself a lot of leverage here in a broader kind of negotiation, but I don't want to evade the issue. You brought up this issue of ethnic cleansing. And this is something that I've been talking about for certainly the entire duration of this war, and probably even earlier.
Respond.
In this war, you have two.
Here's the definition of respond. Say something in reply.
Strategic objective, namely the ethnic cleansing of the other. And so when we're talking about the Israelis, it does seem that the implicit and rational strategic objective would be to get the Palestinian Arabs out of Gaza because they can no longer tolerate the security risk that was proven on October 7th. I don't blame them for it. If I were the Prime Minister of Israel, I would have the same view. And we can't let the Palestinian Arabs off the hook here. They elected Hamas. Their explicit goal, their perfectly clearly stated goal is the ethnic cleansing, if not the outright genocide of Israel. So I guess my question to people who are clutching their pearls and who are scratching their heads is, what did you expect to happen? The fact that President Trump is at least giving leverage for a broader deal here seems to me the best resolution that we've had so far.
The IRS is the largest collection agency in the world, and it's just stepped up enforcement for 2025. If you owe back taxes or if you unfilled returns, do not wait for the IRS to come after you. Getting ahead of this is the smart move. But never, never contact the IRS on your own. Turn it over to the experts at Tax Network USA. Why? Because not all tax resolution companies are equal. Tax Network USA has the third direct line to the IRS. That means they know which agents to deal with and which ones to avoid. Tax Network USA has proven strategies that are designed to settle your tax problems in your favor, whether you owe $10,000 or $10 million. Your attorneys and negotiators have resolved over $1 billion in tax debt. You talk to one of their strategists about your case for free to put your IRS trouble behind you once and for all. Call 1-800-958-1000 or visit tnusa.com/peers. That's PIERS, and that's tnusa.com/peers. Now on with the show. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, Omar, because I've known Trump a long time, and one of his favored techniques is to say something that sounds very outrageous, sounds very shocking, sounds very extreme, to jolt people to a negotiating table. I've seen him do this many, many times. We've just seen it with the tariffs, with Mexico, Canada, and the ongoing row with China. This is part of his playbook. So I don't for a moment think that he believes this is actually achievable the way he laid out yesterday. But do I think that there is some kind of middle ground here where America took charge of Gaza for the foreseeable future, helped rebuild Gaza, and that some people from Gaza do end up going to Jordan and Egypt, as many have in the past, by the way, and that some would return to a revitalized, rebuilt Gaza? Is that beyond the realms of acceptability to people in Palestine?
Yeah, you know, Piers, Trump has said many extreme things in the past, but this is by far the most extreme position he has put out, and that, what frankly, is a very high bar, given the fanaticism with which he utters policy proposals on just about everything. Effectively, at this point, what he's proposing is the destruction of Palestinian society in Gaza, the scattering of Palestinians to neighboring countries, and then for Trump to come and own the Gaza Strip. I mean, it's utter lunacy that the President of the United States is speaking in those terms. And listening to Michael talk about insanity is doing the same thing over and over again. The thing that has been done over and over again is Trump giving a carte blanche, and the United States in general, for decades, giving a carte blanche for Israel to behave however it wants towards the Palestinians, dominating them, besieging them, bombing them at will, and never putting any conditions on that. Frankly, if you want to do something different and try something different, rather than turn to the victims of Israeli occupation and brutality for decades.